Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. For this week's video, I'm going to go through the development process of a layout I designed for a gentleman who is in the process of building a retirement home in Hancock, Michigan. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hancock is a town at the north end of the Keweenaw Peninsula in Upper Michigan, which juts out into Lake Superior. And typical annual snowfall in that area is somewhere in the region of 30 feet. Yes, I said feet, not inches. And that is actually relevant to the design of the layout. I will show you why later on. Here is the layout site. It is a fairly modest bedroom in the attic of the home that he's in the process of building. Initial correspondence with the customer revealed that he liked some of the things that I'd done with my railroad, and this room here is marginally smaller than the space that I had to work with for my own layout. And the bathroom adjacent to it, he said we might be able to get some staging in. And I looked at this and I thought, if he just wants a branch line layout with short trains and small locomotives, then I have some pretty good ideas as to what I could get to fit for him. But when the list of requirements came back, there was a moment when I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Now, I have been known to do the impossible on some layout designs, but miracles take a little bit longer. He wanted a continuous double-track main line with a classification yard, plenty of room for visitors, and he wanted the majority of the layout to be built as a series of dioramas through which the train could travel. Anyway, I am not one to give up on a project, so we had some further discussion, and it turned out that he had not yet even started building the house. So although the design was set in stone, we could actually leave out the interior. So here's the room drawn in Third Planet. You'll notice that all the interior walls are drawn in a different colour, because we decided that it would be perfectly possible to leave just the exterior and not put anything inside. The bathroom fittings would still have the rough-in plumbing, but that would just be under the layout and it would not be in the way. So that gave us a much more usable space, almost 23 feet long. So now, with just this simple alteration, the plan becomes a lot more doable. Now, because he wants to run a fairly long Amtrak train, we figured that 30 inches was about the minimum acceptable radius. So I started drawing in potential footprints with some curves. Version 1 is just a basic oval around the room with a swing gate for access. And although we talked about the possibility of a double-deck layout with the lower deck at the right height for viewing by young children, this one only works for a single deck because it doesn't include a helix. If you recall from the earlier architect's drawing, there was this long passage at the top of the room with the stairs going down. And this plan explores the possibility of looping around that passage over the top of the stairs. And that loop around there is just about long enough to get a reasonable grade separation for two decks in the room. His response to this was that the passage outside was not available to him, so we have to discard that one. Here was an attempt to get a folded dog bone in the room, but as we can see, it's virtually all minimum radius curves, and there is very little else apart from the curves. There's not a lot of space for straight track. And then this is version 4, which was the one we eventually developed. It shows a twice round oval on two decks with helixes hidden in the alcove behind it. Now, although we both felt that this plan was promising, in common with all the others, it didn't look like there was going to be any way of making good use of these alcoves. But then we talked further about providing a utility sink in his train room and a spray booth. And since the house hasn't yet been built, I suggested that we just have his builder put additional doors in the sides here. So this closet here, which eventually will be remodeled to become the shower, is a good spot for a utility sink, and this side here is a good place for a spray booth. So although the railroad does not expand into these areas, we still make good use of them. So I started developing this plan. Here is the lower deck with all the dioramas, showing how the spray booth, the utility sink can fit in these closets. The doors here are a little awkward, but as long as you don't plan on having them all open at the same time, it shouldn't be a problem. This view also shows how I was able to get in some staging underneath the helixes and a third independent loop. And then above that would be a more conventional layout with this classification yard. And here is another view of that upper deck, showing how the yard lead at this end can be extended into a branch line. It's going to be a fairly steep grade to get over the top of the helix, and there's room for additional stub end staging along here. Now, the dioramas were meant to be a catalogue of his past life, and he gave me a list of scenes to include. He wanted something to do with canoeing, boating and water skiing, hot air balloons, because he has had 2 hot air balloons in the past. He wanted something with semi-trucks, because he had a CDL. He wanted something medical, because he is currently a physician. He wanted a high school football field, since he officiated in football for many years. He wanted a snow scene. Remember, this is being built in Hancock with approximately 30 feet of snowfall per year, so he wanted snow shoveling, skiing and snowboarding to feature in one of the dioramas. He wanted a fishing scene. He wanted a small town, because both he and his wife are from small towns. He wanted a small airport for private planes. He wanted a mountain scene, rock canyons with bridges and a river or creek. He wanted a small Lake Superior harbour, an agricultural scene, several small industries, an Amtrak station, and ideally he wanted to display all the different seasons. Oh, and also on his list, he wanted each diorama to include a few subtly humorous scenes. So even with the diorama concept, it's a fairly tall order for such a small room. So let's go on now to what I drew. Now, I started the detailed design on the lower deck because it seemed like the diorama concept was what was going to dictate the layout, whereas the area above was fairly straightforward. So I divided it into 5 dioramas. Ideally, I would have liked all 4 seasons to be in order, but with what we wanted to include, it just wasn't possible to do that. The first and the largest diorama will be set in spring or summer. Coming out of the helix, we start with a couple of farm fields with crops. We have a substantial bridge over a river here, with a lake in the foreground and several boating scenes. I suggested a family group embarking on a ski trip at the jetty. There could be a sailboat in the middle of the lake, canoeing party in the area at the back. This area of the lake cut off as the track crosses a causeway with culverts on it, and then here a fishing scene at the airport across the back, with the 2 ends of the runway disappearing into trees, so we can't see that it's way too short. It's right back in the scene where we can use forced perspective and get away with something a little bit smaller than it should be. And there's 2 hot air balloons high up in the scene. I put them fairly well back so that they don't block viewing of the trains. And also, it gives viewers a reason to bend down and peer further in. Now, some ideas I came up with for possible humour in this scene. On the jetty here, we have a young man with a camera taking a photograph of his sister or girlfriend on the jetty, waving for her to step back just one more step until she falls into the water, fully dressed. And then the fisherman around here could be reeling in an old tyre or maybe a shopping cart, while his dog nonchalantly climbs out of the water with a huge fish in his mouth. And maybe also the man standing amid a pile of assorted junk that he has previously pulled from the lake. One of the hot air balloons could have a cow hanging upside down from its mooring line, reminiscent of a scene in the movie Rat Race. Now, moving on, the next diorama here will be winter. There's a road crossing over the tracks, providing the exit from the scene, and then curving round and paralleling the railroad. Figure there could be a road sign reading Hancock 2 miles, North Pole 27, exaggerating the fact that it's a long way north. And then we have a row of 5 houses. You might only see 3. First one, there'll be a man just finished clearing his driveway from snow when the city plough comes by and puts it all back again. The next houses are buried successively deeper and deeper into the snowbank. The 4th house along is almost buried, with just a portion of the roof and the chimney sticking out, and kids nonchalantly snowboarding on the roof. And then the last house we totally buried, its presents only given away by the mailbox. There could also be an SUV with about 8 feet of snow on the roof, driving down the road, towing a trailer full of snowmobiles. Because in the UP, it doesn't matter how much snow we have, it's business as usual. So moving across the swing gate to the next diorama. Still in winter, because winter in the UP lasts a long time. Again, at the far end of the scene, we have another road overbridge hiding the exit. We have a large modern warehouse here with numerous semi-trucks backed up to it. And the spurs could lead into the building and possibly curve around behind and under the spray booth to give them more length. And I thought of putting an abandoned spur here. Maybe it used to be a team track, but it is no longer in use because of the trucking industry gradually eating into the railroad's trade share. I figure that the turnout will be removed, but the track will remain buried in vegetation. And an idea for humour in this scene, I figured maybe an express boxcar still being unloaded decades after the spur has almost been abandoned. Moving round to the next diorama, this is the fall scene. Again, I use a road overbridge to disguise the entrance to the scene so that I don't have too many tunnels. There's tunnels at the other end of the scene, but a road bridge at this end. I have roads both over the track here and under it further down, with a steeply sloping street at the back, which I've named Hill Street. We have his high school football field here, although a full football field would be huge, so I've just put the end zone in here with the rest of it implied in the aisle. And I'm thinking the scoreboard could possibly show the result of a game that has special place in his memories. At the back here, have a representation of the church that he and his wife got married in. Now, I don't know whether they were married in the fall or not, because he never told me. We could have a wedding party posed outside the church representing his own wedding. And the row of Main Street buildings down here could include a cinema playing whichever movie was current at the time. And this low-level street here also has a grade crossing on the track that goes down to the staging yard. The grade crossing was one of the other things that he had on his list of things he'd like to include if possible. Now, as for humour ideas in this scene, I thought of the row of Main Street buildings here. Since he works at the Mayo Clinic, one of them would represent that. And then next door, we're going to have the Ketchup Clinic for alternative medicine. And next door to that, Dr. Wedgak, the proctologist. And if you read the small print, you'll see that Wedgak stands for We Don't Give a Carp. And then next to that is Timar Savings and Loan, where Timar stands for Take Your Money and Run. Moving on now to the final and smallest diorama. This one represents a deep canyon with a tall trestle over it. You could have his mountain climbers in here as well. A waterfall at the back. So what this diorama lacks in length, it makes up for in height. And when it comes to humour in this one, it took me a while to come up with something, and then I decided, how about the humour in this diorama being not including any humour, so that the owner can have fun at the expense of visitors wasting their time looking for something that isn't there. So if we now think about his request list, most of the things on that list are included on this lower level in the dioramas, and the other things, the Amtrak station and this industrial area down here, can be a small Lake Superior port. Everything else that he asked for, there's plenty of room to include on the upper deck. So when I sent him the plan for the lower deck, he was very impressed. But just as I was about to start working on the upper deck, I got a communication from him to put the project on hold. The cost of his retirement home was going to exceed his budget. So the layout site is going to change, and it is no longer going to be this shape. Which is a little bit disappointing actually, because it's such an unusual shape of room, but I was able to make good use of all the alcoves. And it looks as though his new site, although it might be about the same size, is probably going to end up being a basic rectangle. So this layout plan is not actually going to fit properly. It's going to have to be redrawn completely when I have the new site plan. So rather than waste time on finishing the upper deck, I'll just leave you with the layout at the state that it got to, and I'll sign off here. And even though the plan remained incomplete, I felt it a good idea to do this video because I felt the diorama concept of the lower deck was worth sharing with my viewers. I hope that has been the case, and I hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.